This story is about a camping trip that we took, a hiking trip one time, and we went down to a place called Havasupa Falls, which is on the Havasupa Indian Reservation. Very, very pretty place. I highly recommend it if anybody can go there. The falls, the Havasupa Falls, is actually a series of 4 different waterfalls, and eventually that stream system leads directly into the Grand Canyon and the Colorado River. The water is a very bluish green, crystal clear water. It has a lot of calcium and magnesium in it that makes it that color. And because of the mineral content at the base of the falls, each fall contains a series of pools, individual pools that are formed from that calcium and magnesium, and they make it so that you can actually swim around in each individual pool. The water is pretty cool, but it's really fun. It does require some advanced planning because there are no roads that lead down there, so you have to actually either go by horseback or you have to walk the distance. And we weren't really prepared when we went. We were camping for about 4 days down in the falls itself, and so we had to pack in all of our food and our water and our clothes and everything, and so each one of our packs was about 75 pounds, and we decided we were just going to walk down to the falls. So we started the hike at about 10 o'clock in the morning, and you start up on the rim of the canyon and then you hike down into the falls. And then, as I said, there's no roads or anything down there, so if you go, be prepared to hike the 10 miles that you need to get there. You can hire pack horses to take your stuff down, and you can actually rent out horses themselves, but they take, you have to reserve those a good while in advance. Otherwise you're stuck on your own. And it was about 75 degrees when we started, and by the time we got a couple of miles into the canyon, the temperature was about 105. And we quickly ran out of all of the water that we brought, and we weren't sure how far we needed to hike before we came to the campsite. So it turns out that you have to hike about 10 miles before you actually get to the campsite. But you had to bring your tent, or else you slept in the outdoors. They do have a well, so they have one central well where you can go pump water. The village itself, most of the village doesn't have any power. I think they had one small little general store, and like I said, there are no roads or anything that get down there, so there were probably maybe 24 homes. Havasupa Indians, it's actually their land, they own it, and so they set up the tours and everything. You have to pay the tribe there for a permit. Campground, I think, fits maybe, I don't know, maybe 50 people at a time. And we set up camp and decided the next day to go down. The falls start with Havasupa Falls, which is probably the prettiest. And then then you have come to the campground, and the second falls that you come to is called Mooney Falls, and that waterfall is the biggest and the most treacherous to get down to. And we weren't aware of that either, so we decided one morning to go out and hike down to Mooney Falls. And the trail starts out very nice and level, and it's a very easy walk, but it gradually gets steeper and steeper until at some point you start actually going through a series of tunnels that have been carved out by the water itself to get down to the base of the third falls. And so as you go through the tunnels, it's very dark, and the trail gets steeper and steeper until it opens up finally, and the last 80 or so feet is almost a sheer cliff that you have to hike down. And as we saw that, what we were up against, just about every member of our crew decided they didn't want to do it. But the problem is it's a one-way trail, so traffic can only go one way at a time, and we were at the front of a series of a group of about maybe 30 people that were waiting to get down, and so there's no way to go around anybody. So once you start the hike, you have to finish it. Otherwise, everyone has to stop, turn around, and hike all the way back up. And there was a lot of praying that went on, and everyone got very religious as we started going down the final 80 feet. And it compounds things because the spray from the falls itself make the rocks very slippery. So everything, by the time you get down there, you're drenched, and the rocks are just covered with a kind of a slime type substance. So we actually made it all the way down. No one fell, luckily. One of our team members did sprain her ankle on the way down, though, so we weren't sure how she was going to get up. We stayed down there for about 5 hours or so, and then started the hike back up, and she did make it okay, so we were lucky there. Also, another fun thing to do while you're at the falls, they have a series of what look like old mines, but they're actually just caves in the rock itself. And so we hiked up to one of those, and we noticed that it kind of shimmered. It had a shimmer to it, and we weren't sure what that was. It wasn't light coming from anywhere. And we realized that if you broke off pieces of the inside of the cave, they were just solid crystal. So whatever piece you broke off, you would end up with a piece of rock crystal, calcium carbonate. However big a piece you could break off, if you could break off a boulder that size, most of it was crystal on the inside. So it was almost solid crystal. So we got greedy with that crystal too. Everyone's like, oh, I gotta have a piece of that. And so we actually started packing out like 50 pounds of rock, until we realized that we had to hike it 10 more miles out, pack it out of the park. So I think we ended up with about 3 pieces of small crystals when they came out of there. The rest got ditched along the trail, and so that was a fun activity to do. And once you're down in the campground itself, there's a lot of activities. Like the water is crystal clear blue, so it's very fun to swim in. It's very cold, but it's very, very fun. It's hot outside. We were also swimming one time at the falls, and I had a little knapsack, and I had my watch in the knapsack, and it was a very heavy canvas knapsack. And I came back, and there was a hole had been chewed right through my pack, and my watch was gone. And when we were looking around, I noticed that there was a little raccoon that was ripping into everybody's backpack, stealing their food, all their shiny objects, and stealing them and running them away. So watch out for crafty raccoons down there, because they're all over. And they'll rob you blind, little banditos. Be prepared though, you have to be in pretty good shape to hike down there. It's not just your simple, I'm gonna go camping and hike a mile or so. It's a 10-mile hike to get down there, and it's very rough terrain. And you're hiking, if it's summertime, it gets very hot, and there's no water, so you gotta bring all your water down. And there's no services, there's nothing down there, so it's pretty rustic. And then if you hike from the campground, that's another 10 miles, and you can get right to the Colorado River. So right down into the Grand Canyon itself, right all the way down to the Colorado River. Very nice though, very fun. Never seen water that crystal clear blue before. And definitely if you're going down to Mooney Falls, watch out for that climb. It's a heck of a climb. Very steep, very scary. And once you start, you can't stop. You have to keep going.